All right, hi friends. We're back. Today we're doing Mideast Part 3, specifically Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. On the videos last week, I got a little, I don't know, wordy, talky, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to try to keep these a little more brief. I'm going to try to keep them under 10 minutes, um, and we'll go from there. Okay? So again, we're talking about the Mideast, Iran, Iraq, and Turkey specifically. And so we're going to start with Iraq, and you can see on the map that's where it's located. It's right in the middle of everything. Um, Kind of the area, the Mesopotamia, Fertile Crescent, the kind of the ground zero for a lot of civilization growth, starting basically at the dawn of time. Um, there's about 37 million people in the country. You probably know a bit about it because it's been in our news a lot. So you've got capital Baghdad, which is kind of right in the center there, right here. And Arabic is the number one language, with Kurdish being kind of a distant second. There are a decent population of Kurds, but not a ton. So here's kind of a political map. Now you can see it's split up. There's some big arid areas along the rivers. There's lots of little different, um, uh, I don't know, provinces, I guess way to put it. And so the gist I want you to get from here is that if you look to the south, it's the arid, kind of the arid regions, and then to the north is a little more mountainous, but they're smaller. And so you have pockets of Kurdish, pockets of different um, ethnicities, things like that. I'm going to pause right now and I'll let you watch this video. Again, you should have uh, this video up and then also the slideshow right below it. So you should be able to go right to this video. All right. Okay, so we're back. And oops, I messed up there. Here we go. There we go. So we got a little bit of information about Iraq. I don't want to necessarily read it all. There are some links. So you've got a thing about Saddam Hussein. There's got a 8-year war. Basically, the king was assassinated um, back a ways, so 2003, or sorry, in 1958, and then there was a military coup led by Saddam Hussein, and he ruled from 1958 to 2003. Um, it was a U.S. and British invasion basically, but he is the big thing here is that he's part of the Ba'ath Party, which is Sunni. Okay, so he, being a Sunni, is against the Shia, which is Iraq, and that's a big tension. So when we talk about this Iraq-Iran 8-year war, um, that's a big piece of it. So not only is there oil and power and things like going on there, but there's also religion for a lot of these people. So if you click on this link, it'll tell you a bit about that. It was a big deal. 1.5 million people dead. About 10 years after that war, he being Saddam Hussein, invaded Kuwait and then held it for about a year. And then his forces were kicked out by the U.S. Now, we did stop right there until the next President Bush came along. Um, so we stopped, put sanctions on him, and then a couple years later, his son, George W. Bush, went in and overthrew him. Okay, so it was occupied now from March 2003 until 2010, so 7 years. And we still have troops there, but we were the main, I don't know, authority, I guess you could put it. Um, we'll see whether it can succeed to go to a democratic society. It's made a lot of progress, even in the last, say, 3 years. I'm going to pause right here and let you watch this video. All right, we're back. And so obviously Iraq's got a lot going on. It's a very popular country as far as population, so 37 million. That's that's a pretty good number. The oil reserves are pretty big. The location in the Gulf area is very, very important. It's just generally a pretty big deal. Now, it has, like I mentioned, it has been people have been living there for a long time. Um, this is an ancient ziggurat, and I again, probably butchered the name, but it's in Mesopotamia, between the two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, right? So the priests of Samaria worked out the ziggurats, destroying many relics in Middle East that predate Islam or are associated with polytheistic, more than one god religion. So they basically built these temples and used them as a seat of power to kind of control the area, I guess would be the best way to put this. It is actually kind of interesting if you Google Sumeria and then that name, the ziggurats, and you can get some background on that. There isn't anything in the test, but it's just, if you got, I don't know. I like history, obviously, because I teach it, but if you go back and look, they've got some interesting stuff going on. All right, so we move into the Ottoman and Persian domains. So we're moving through time, right? And Turkey, if you're not aware, used to be called the Ottoman Empire, or at least a big part of it, right? So they were the Persian, which is Iran, and mostly Iran, and the Ottomans, right? So this is around 1800s for the most part. I mean, they do actually, Persia goes back a little bit farther than that, but they're not. The interesting thing here is that they're both predominantly Muslim. They're not necessarily considered Arab, right? Because they're not on the Arabian Peninsula, but they also both touch other regions, like say Iran touches South Asia, so the Pakistans and Central Asia and all the other stands, and then the Southern Caucasus Mountains, which borders, well, I'll let you look at the map. Turkey borders the Caucasus Mountains as well, and then with Europe, right? So, and Turkey is actually technically part of Europe and part of Asia, depending on how you cut the cake there. So how is it part of Europe and Asia? So you've got this little chunk over here, right? And that's part of Europe. And then you've got the Bosphorus Straits, and then the Mediterranean Sea down here, obviously. But it's a pretty old area with a lot of history. All right, so the Turkish Peninsula is part of the Western frontier, so the Persian army in the 6th century. So again, Persians go back a bit more than 1800s. So that's back to the 500 CE, give or take. The city of Byzantium, so it's a tip over here, became the capital of the Roman Empire. So it went under the name of Constantinople for a few years. It remained part of the Byzantine Empire until 1453, when the Ottomans came in and took over the area, and then they renamed it Istanbul, so you can see it right there. That's the name it currently has. And then the Ottoman Empire actually lasted a long time. From 1453, I mean, they were around before that, but this is when they formalized the control of this whole area, especially the Bosphorus Strait, which was kind of an important piece. As you can get into the Black Sea and then all the ports along the Black Sea into Russia and things like that. But anyways, they controlled it in 1453, and they held it until after the World War I, 1923. So between 1923 and 1928, Kemal Atatürk, he was known as the father of the Turkish Republic. So this is after the Ottoman Empire, and he laid down a modern, secular, so that's non-religious Turkish state. It's gradually developed into a parliamentary democracy. It didn't really start that way. It was a little bit different, but it has worked its way into that. But it has kind of a militaristic, history and a militaristic tendency. There are some really cool hot springs. And then obviously you've heard of Turkish dancing with the fez and the large, I don't want to call it a skirt, but they're jackets that billow. I don't know. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. And here's just a stock picture of a Turkish church. So something that is pretty predominant for this area, not only in Turkey, but in Iraq and a little bit in Iran, is the Kurdish people. Okay, so I'm going to pause and I'm going to let you watch this video. This one specifically talks about Turkey's Kurds, but yeah. So go ahead and watch that and we'll come back. All right. So now we're back, and if I, oh, there we go. Having all sorts of problems. There we go. Okay. Having all sorts of problems. Hit the wrong button. So anyways, we're back, and so here we go. Come on. We're having all sorts of problems here. There we go. Okay. So Turkey's economy and EU membership. Now, it's again, Turkey's kind of got an old history, but they're also trying to be part of the EU. They're trying to be part of the European culture, that kind of thing, because they see the financial benefits of being part of that. They don't have necessarily any oil reserves, which a lot of the other countries that we're talking about in the Mideast unit. But they do have some, I should say. They do have some, but they don't have as much as the other ones. So they have to diversify quite a bit. They have 40% of the workforce is actually in old school farming. All right, so I'm going to pause again, and I'll let you watch this video. It's kind of a short one. Okay, and now we're back, and we're going to, this really doesn't want to work, does it? There we go. Oh, see, it just gave me all sorts of trouble. There we go. There we go. Get out of that. Okay, so now we're on to Iran. So Iran was known as Persia for a long time. So basically from about the 3rd century up until the 1900s, it was known as Persia. There's been a lot of ancient civilizations there. So as you see, the first bullet point, Cyrus the Great founded the Persian Empire in 550 BC. This is the official start of it, but there was actually basically Persian chieftains running around. Cyrus the Great combined everybody into one big thing. Now, before that, the Sassanid Empire flourished. It was brought down by Arabs marauding in 636. Now they ruled again, the Sassanids, which are kind of a similar name to the Sassanid Empire, but unrelated. So they ruled from 1502 to 1736. And then a monarchy basically survived until 1979. And about this time, there were a lot of transitions, especially in the Middle East. Countries were going out of colonial rule, things like that, earlier. But Iran lasted as a monarchy until 1979. And then a repressive regime, and you can see the words there, but it's of the last Shah, the king, was overthrown by the Islamic Revolution of Ayatollah Khomeini. He was a pretty famous guy. And then some pictures of Iran. Here's one of the mosques in Iran, and a picture of one of the cities with the mosque in the background with the temple. So Iran and the U.S. have never really gotten along. Basically, we supported the old king, just kind of as a, maybe he was a bad guy, but he was our bad guy, I guess would be a way to put it. And so the Ayatollah took over, and pretty shortly after that, they took over the embassy, which had 60 Americans still there, and they were going to set them free, right? And there's a little bit of conspiracy theory, but they're pretty sure Ronald Reagan or his party talked them into holding on to them. And then after he got elected, right? So January 21st, and this is now over a year after it began, he just took the office, and then he had delivered his inauguration speech, he being Ronald Reagan, and they released him. So it is a little bit of a odd coinky-dink, but yeah. So there's plenty of people that say that helped Reagan win the presidency because they held on to the hostages past the election and such. All right, so in 2003, George W. Bush, again, now he's invaded Iraq, and included Iran in the famous axis of evil. So that's Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. And so that we started, well, even back in the 79, we had a lot of pressure and kind of fought proxy wars in and around Iraq and Iran. But we really put on the pressure economically with our friends and neighbors. All right, so oops, I'll pause this and I'll let you watch the video. All right, and we're back. So the last little bit I'll leave you with is the current state of Iran's theocracy. So they have a theocracy, and what that means is the leadership, the ruling is done through their religion, right? Theocracy. Hassan Rouhani, okay, so he's pretty liberal, but he's still a religious leader, right? And it's kind of a goofy situation. So they have like I don't know, how do you want to say it? A high priest, right? I'm trying to put it in different words, but so they have the Ayatollah, and he basically not he endorses like Rouhani here. So when he recommends him, then everybody kind of votes for him and they follow what he says, right? And the idea is the Constitution of Iran says that the ruler is supposed to be the one that's best qualified to interpret Islam and ensure the people that they strictly adhere to the principles of the Shia Islamic religious practices. Now, remember, Shia is kind of the minority in all of Islamic populations. And now there's a pretty big culture in Iran for the 25 and under crowd that are pushing for change. If you think about pretty strict Islamic rules, women can't go out without headdresses, with their face covered, that kind of thing. They're not allowed to drive. There's a lot of stuff going on there. We probably will investigate that a little bit as far as gender equality and things. We'll see if we have time here before we take our Christmas break. And that's my video. I apologize for not quite making the timelines, but yeah, take care and we'll see you next week.